feeling and atmosphere and the future. So I will talk about a barn. Actually, a barn cannot be translated into English. I don't know exactly what the colleagues who, for him it is the native language, or for him it is the mother tongue, or what will the Finnish colleague will say. But we were looking, in fact, for the translation of the barn. So we had barn,
house. Jukka, what is Finnish? Lato. Kūts, skaists vārds. Un manā stāstā būs divas kūtas. Pirmo kūti es atjaunoju 1982. gadā, kad es kā jauna arhitekta aizgāju no Pilsētu projekta institūta strādāt laukos, jo man likās nospiedoši strādāt un spēlēties ar jauno dzīvojamo rajonu kastītēm. Kolhozs tajā laikā deva iespējas kaut cik individuāli izpausties. Un mans pirmais projekts...
And this, I'm sorry, pardon me, on the wrong channel. And so I left the Urban Planning Institute and went to the countryside because I found it depressing to be developing and designing those ugly box-like houses. So I went into the countryside to a collective farm, which was not far from Riga. And as I reminisce this time, nothing really has changed in my life. 37 years ago, when I was a bit older than 20, when I was in my 20s, I first created the model of this barn, and this is how it looked after the reconstruction when the project was completed. So they were no longer keeping cows in there, and there were more modern buildings built for that out of the steel and concrete. So this old brick barn was disused, so it was no longer needed, and I was tasked with building or creating a canteen there. So I added an annex to this building. So it is that part. Yeah, everyone's saying Zaiga, you shouldn't try because the laser's not working on the screen. So this is the old part, and I added this new annex, or this new volume to it, and I put in a sequence of windows, and you see massive beams without support, and I designed lamps myself, and tables were designed by me as well. So I sent it into the Soviet Young Architects competition, and I got the third place. I won the third place for our foreign colleagues. In the Soviet times, we had 15 republics in the USSR, so the geographical coverage was very wide. We could freely travel across the Soviet Union, and meetings like these in Moscow, where people, young architects from all the Soviet republics came. Moscow somehow liked the barn. I mean, the commission in the Moscow somehow liked this barn, and they found it, very interesting. It was 1982 when modernism was the thing. And then my project was also nominated for the World Biennale of Architecture in Sofia. So we went there together with a group of young architects from the Soviet Union to Bulgaria. This is the sort of the first part of the story, and this is the second part, or this is my second barn, my latest project. So somehow I've gone full circle, if you will. So I had one barn 37 years ago, built of brick, made of brick, and then another barn in Rumene Manor, built in 1913, built by the last Duke, as in Schwarz, by the Baltic German, and he wanted to keep 200 cows there and also bring in some species from Denmark as well, some specimen from Denmark as well. So it was the sort of the agricultural context of 1930 when barn and cows were, the very basis or the essentials of our agriculture, and that is why that is why we can't translate it, precisely into other languages, because we, and only or mostly we, did keep the cows in those barns. But this is a sort of emblematic of what I did over 4 decades. Basically, you know, architect somewhere on the sidelines, and there's the owner, Juris Karlsons, who owns the barn together with the artist, Jans Jakobsons, are opening these big gates that I've designed. And so women implementing their projects, you know, through men. And this is the barn, the way it looked before the reconstruction. You might not know how this manor house looks, especially those from abroad, but local people know. It is 1,300 square meters large, or, pardon me, 3,000 square meter large, and it was built in 1913, 1920. We went through the agricultural reform, and those manor estates were split and taken away from the German owners. So when he was building this barn for the cows from Denmark, he didn't know that 7 years later he will lose at least part of the manor estate, and he'll be deprived of literally everything, I'm sorry. And I remember this barn, you know, 14 years ago, the way it looked when the owners of the Roman manor bought the manor. There were some cows that were still kept there, and the barn was functioning, and there is a big sort of extended volume in the middle, and there was a road in the middle, and those cows were facing the exit or the entrance, and they were fed from the roadside, and in the attic there was hay and straw stored. So you see the slip on the left-hand side through which the carriages went into the attic and unloaded the straw, the hay. So, you know, very functional and very smart way to manage it. I don't know what was the initial roof material, but this has roof slates, Soviet roof slates on it. And so you have the straw at the top, cows underneath, and there was a dairy there as well during the Soviet times, and bulls as well. And this is the model for the reconstruction. Again, I'm using models in the case of this barn as well. So after a thorough analysis, and here you can see this model, and after a careful analysis, I built this model in order to give a feel of what it might look like, what the outcome might be. You see, it has a T shape, and then I made a removable roof and had to reconstruct it without using the posts, because what are you going to use the barn for? I mean, you will have it for social events because nobody's keeping cows there anymore. And this is artist Mars Jakobsons in the yard. And so the yard of this manor complex, and behind you see a building where the carriages were kept and so on and so forth. And to the right you have reconstructed barn. And this is the artist playing with this model. And there are stables also there. Those of you who haven't been to Rumen, and there is the manor house itself, built in the 18th century by a German architect. We reconstructed or restored it 10 years ago, the main manor house. And next to the manor estate is the yard. So you can basically see those stables in the background. And stable was the poshest of the buildings because, you know, horses were not just means of transportation, they also plowed the fields and so on and so forth, and it was a sort of a symbol of prestige. And this is the manor house that we reconstructed. It was half in ruins 15 years ago. It was built with larger stone, using also the brick. The clay brick was used on the corners, but it was mostly stone walls. And here you can see the view from the park side, the Manor House view outside, and to the right you can see the stables, and this is the view from the yard. To the left you have the servants' house, and this is where all the people lived because they had to milk cows 5 in the morning. And to the right you have those stables, and in the background again you have the manor house. And this yard, I don't know what the original was, but this is the barn before the reconstruction. So basically that yard in bigger houses was laid with cobblestone because you brought, horses through there, and cows went through there to graze, and this is where during the Soviet times you had, culture center, you had school, and you had used it, this as a square basically for various social functions as well. And some people remember it being very muddy and very dirty, and there were a lot of flies. It reeked. There was an awful stench. And this is the new portal that I built, or designed rather. And we needed a new entrance because, as I already showed, there was the entrance, for the cows to go out, and that was the old image, and this is the new image, and the same can be seen in that model. So the new portal sort of guides you into this building. Brings you to the main axis where you have the grand hall and the entrance hall. Now, what is the future of this project in terms of what we are going to do with industrial heritage and bigger barns? Well, there's not much you can do about them. You can reconstruct them into a concert hall, into a venue for corporate events, for weddings, and so on and so forth. And this is what this barn will also do. I mean, that's what its purpose is. It's going to be a great music concert hall. Our great pianist, Sorkins, will play there, so come, and if you can, come and go to his concert. And on 31st of August there was a wedding there as well for about 100 people. So bringing culture to the barn is what we are doing. And we also had a traveling tour, a traveling exhibition from Africa as well. And I asked a couple of linguists, how to call it, because you're not going to say that you're going to have a concert or an event in a barn. Can we call it a culture barn? We have culture factories, culture garages, and culture airfields. We have a culture station with platforms, train platforms. I don't know whether you were shown those, but we also have hangars. We also have airfields, airports, garages, and so on and so forth. In Berlin, you have 2 bunkers, Hitler's bunkers as well. We have other farm buildings. But what about barn? And both linguists, my daughter and my son's wife, who have doctoral degree in linguistics, they said, the barn is about manner, about fertilizers. So if I say that, this reeks like a barn, or it's as dirty as barn, then, your first thing that comes to your mind is that it has a bad smell to it. But then I thought, cows and calves, it's all about life, about birth. And, culture is also born, in a way, in its venue, and it's born in the barn, and we have these decorations, calves and cows and so on and so forth, and we have a religious element to it. My daughter, who's religious, she said, "You're going too far. I mean, you shouldn't put a sort of a religious meaning into a reconstructed barn which has been financed by a rich guy."
So currently I'm referring to it as a cultural environment in the barn. So we also had to deal with the roof and how to let the light in. Here you can see how we have cleaned and restored this stone masonry. And I was happy enough to attract great specialists of masonry who built actually this new portal wall. And also when we restored the stable and the carriage storage house, we tried to achieve these clean forms and to use materials. So I tried not to fragment the roof. This is why I didn't choose smaller tiles. I wanted to keep it clean. So here you can see the roof windows, because getting the light inside the building was one of our main concerns. But we, at the same time, tried to make a minimalist design. Here you can see also the views from the building towards the golf course. And here you can see also the counterforces, and my intention also was to have this terrace with a view towards the golf course. And here you can see both brick floors and also wooden floors. But what concerns these brick floors, it was years ago when we bought a lot of bricks from old manor. And here, my beloved construction people made sure that they prepare each brick so that they look nice, and here you can see how they put together, laid this brick floor. Here you see, of course, also the massive wooden structures as well as rather heavy metal structures. So actually these massive structures was my choice because we had to support the heavy roof. However, together with the windows, you can see that the overall impression is rather light. So in a way it was a grotesque, big and heavy, but at the same time, with the help of light, we, in a way, made it, in a way, achieved some harmony. Then there was an idea to hold an exhibition in this barn of some ritual items and many cultural items from Africa. And I was quite concerned about what will happen to them and whether it is acceptable to keep such rare and valuable artifacts in a barn. However, it all went well. So basically here you can see all my ideas materialized. Large, heavy wooden structures, metal structures. And here you can see the fireplace. Also, in this case, we started with a model cut out from cardboard. And since the idea was to have large elements throughout the barn, we attracted local craftsmen who used such metal slates, who had been neglected somewhere in a ditch for decades. And then we used these metal slates and we used this metal also to make the mirror frames. Here you can see also the splash zone, so to say, behind the toilet. Here you can see also the lavatory doors made out of the same metal. Here you can see also the locking mechanism. But of course, we have to think about safety. For example, if someone faints or doesn't feel well after being locked in, we had to make also special holes to open in emergency situations these locks. So we had to play a lot with the locally available materials. Here you can see also one piece of the exhibit. So basically, it's rather robust, simplistic. However, I try to counterweight it all with large windows. So that would be my story about my restoration project. Thank you.